Welcome back to Madam Cross New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. I shall see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhollow today. Well, I need to cough immediately. Good job, me. Still, no, well, okay. I'm not even ill. I don't think. Sorry, like my phone charging cable is getting caught on all this random stuff I've got on my desk. But I'm not even ill. I don't think particularly. It's just it's winter time here in the UK, so obviously everyone gets a little bit sniffly. I mean, maybe I am, in which case, that's not great, but, I guess there's not really much I can do about it if it's already happened, but, I actually do have something interesting to talk about today, which I'll get onto in a second. So, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 10:55 p.m. on Monday, December 5th, 2022. I assume the episode title is going to be something somewhat related to this, but I'm going to talk about VR, virtual reality, which, it's technology that's been out for quite a long time now, to be honest. It's not like it's sort of like, I'm not going to say it's old hat, because it's not quite old hat. A lot of people still haven't experienced it, and myself included, until on Sunday, to be perfectly honest. But it's been out for a while. People have been aware of it. People sort of know about it, especially if you're in the gaming sphere. You know about things like this and sort of like Beat Saber at the same time. Sorry, well, I'm also just like looking at my phone, trying to do things on my phone at the same time while talking. But you know what, Animal Crossing is basically a talking simulator for me right now anyway, so it's kind of part of a course. No, but it was my friend's birthday on Sunday, and we went to do nowadays on birthdays we tend to do something maybe a little bit different, sometimes not a little bit different, who really knows, but this time we went to go to a virtual reality escape room in a place not too far away from us. And you might have seen them about that sort of thing. We're quite experienced with escape rooms. I'm going to be honest. I've done probably about a dozen or so before, in the first place. Rowan, you're not allowed to move out, but this is the first time I've ever done a virtual reality one, because it's something which I've seen crop up like in like a couple of years ago maybe, I don't know, but it was more of a sort of novelty thing, because obviously even virtual reality is quite sort of prohibitively expensive in the first place, so it's not like people are investing into it. But nowadays it's becoming a lot more common, I think, at least in entertainment areas, centres, etc, etc. So escape rooms, it feels like a pretty like reasonable natural fit, right? Because escape rooms, the whole thing is about having the scenery and like building out and getting the puzzles. Well, you can easily like program puzzles and that sort of thing, and if anything, if you're in virtual reality, you can have even crazier scenery. You can even have a more immersive experience. Hopefully you can do even wilder things. I would say, what was my overall thought on it? It was, I think virtual reality is kind of cool. I'm not going to be like, wow, this is like life consuming or anything, or like I'm going to I immediately need to go get one or anything, but I'm just like, this is pretty neat, is what I'd say. A virtual reality escape room, at least the one we did, but in particular, it was okay. I said probably kind of good for a virtual reality escape room, but I'm not going to be like it's that amazing for an escape room in the first place, at least compared to some other escape rooms I've done. So I'm trying to think where to really start. So that was my first time like ever really experiencing virtual reality, even like getting the opportunity to experience it in the first place. You might be happy to know that I didn't get motion sick while doing it. Like all the three other friends I was with, like a big conversation afterwards was like, oh, actually wait, I didn't realise Tosm was still here. So it was 11 p.m. is when he goes. Noted. But it was a conversation we were having afterwards with my friends about how they felt like some of them felt like a little bit sort of like disorientated, like after they took off a headset, like they were back in reality. It's like, oh, it's like we're still in reality. It's like I'm looking at things and like my mind goes to like pick up things using like a controller rather than like using my hands or something. And obviously it was all like quite exaggerated for a facetious joke and that sort of thing, but there certainly seemed to be the consensus of like a sort of sense of disorientation, or a certain sense of like, you get that feeling sometimes when you're like in a cinema for a really long time, or like in a dark area for a really long time. You come out to the light and you're just like, what is going on? Like you're in a whole new dimension. For some reason I did not get that sensation at all. I just like took it off and was like, cool, that was a pretty neat experience. But yeah, that was my first time playing with virtual reality in the first place. We were not in one where we could move around that much. We could move around a little bit, but we were basically confined to like a meter by meter square. We had the movement scheme of teleporting everywhere, because that's generally what people prefer, I think, in augmented virtual reality. It's something that I've heard about, because motion sickness goes crazy if you use the joysticks to move in virtual reality for most people. So that's why a lot of virtual reality games tend to be on rails, or you need a ridiculously large area to play with, or you teleport. get around places. Half-Life Alyx might be like that. I'm not really sure. But the general premise of what we were doing in virtual reality is we were the escape room is we had to disarm a bomb like at the top of a building and that sort of thing, and it was weird. Like, the actual escape room game itself was weird. Like, I had my gripes of it. I would say, personally, the biggest thing, I think, was the differentiation between things being in part of the scenery and being things which were interactable. Because there's a thing where, like, everything had, like, a highlight around it, technically. Instructions being like, oh, if it's white, you can highlight it. If it's, like, yellow, I can't remember what yellow was. It's, like, interactable or something. And red means it's, like, too heavy. It's heavy. Or something like that. I can't remember the exact details. So something along those lines. But, of course, you can't have a highlight on all the time. Probably. Except for the first item that you see in the game is highlighted all the time. It's highlighted with a bright white outline the entire time, and then like nothing else in the game is until you like go up to it. So there's I would say from a game design perspective, there was a really the line was far too blurred between things you can interact with, which were just pointless scenery, and things which seem like a part of the puzzle, which is not so much in escape rooms, because in escape rooms there are times where you're like, I'm not sure if this is part of the puzzle, but you can often just like walk up to it and just like, you know, push it and poke it and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's fine. But with virtual reality, you either walk up to it and you can't do anything with it, in which case definitely not part of the puzzle, or you can walk up to it and it's just sort of like pointless. Not saying that there aren't like red herrings in escape rooms, but I guess like in physical escape rooms, it feels a bit easier to sort of distinguish between the two. You can very clearly go, oh yeah, that's not what you want, because, you know, in virtual reality, it's a video game, you have to do the pre-programmed solution. While in the real-life escape room, you can kind of get whatever solution you want, as long as it, you know, it does it without, you know, damaging a room. And a big indicator in escape rooms is the fact that there's locks everywhere. So, you know, you see a lock, you're like, I have to interact with this. With virtual reality, escape rooms do away with the locks because you don't need them anymore. You just have, you know, pre-programmed, you know, like walls, I suppose, in the game, which you need to, you know, bypass. Not like physical walls, like game design walls, I suppose. But of course, you know, without a clear indicator, it kind of becomes a little bit blurred about exactly what is interactable, what isn't interactable. So we actually got stuck on the first part for quite a while. No, it was probably like 5 minutes or something. I mean, it was really fun playing, I would say, because like just like teleporting about, like picking things up and chucking things was really funny, and just seeing like all your friends about in virtuality space is really weird. Honestly, it worked a lot better than I expected. Like it did give that 3D space a sense. I didn't get motion sick. It didn't look as high resolution as I wanted, but that maybe just because, you know, if I had my own personal, you know, version, my own personal headset or something, it would look a lot better. But it's not. You can kind of see the pixels. It kind of does look a bit low resolution. Kind of like, you know, looking like an airplane TV screen rather than, you know, looking at like a high def TV screen, which is fair enough. You know, how much density can you really get in a headset in the first place, especially when you're that close to the screen. But that's something which probably evolves better with technology in time. The movement control felt kind of weird to begin with. Turning around, it's very natural to turn around. The wires, I would say, is a big problem. Virtuality is like, but every time in the game, basically you have to press a button on the joystick to turn around, but it's so natural just basically to turn around, to lean over, to look at things in the first place. Like every time I saw something on table, I would like trying to walk up to it, but because we were confined to a 1x1 area, because we weren't allowed to move out in this big area, it was sort of like, oh, you know, go back to your area, and I was like, oh, it just completely takes me out of it. But especially to sort of like rotating around, I often got like they did their best to get the wires out of the way. The wires were basically out of the back of the headset and like hoisted up to the ceiling. But I mean, maybe it's a sort of a thing where they need like an elastic coming down from the ceiling to make sure that the wire stays directly upwards, because there would be times I twist around and then I'd be like, I try and lean forward a little bit just to get a better look, and I'd be like, oh, there's a wire wrapped around my neck, and I had to untangle myself. I mean, of course, the remedy is solved by having wireless headsets. That's kind of cost prohibitive, or like having some clever wired solution. Like, I think it would just be cool if a wire like plugged in at the top of a headset or something, so then it could be like wired up out of the stage, you know, kind of like a Dodgems car. But you know, maybe that's like it's not really practical for consumer-based purposes, which is, you know, the type of headsets they're using in the first place. And you kind of want the headsets to be designed for consumer practices and consumption in the first place. Otherwise you're not going to get like an audience who actually actively buys into it, and you're not going to sell any products unless to businesses, which is, you know, I don't, you know, sorry Metaverse, I don't think that's the direction in which VR is necessarily going. But yeah, what else was I going to say? Surprisingly, the teleportation did not feel that unnatural. You get used to it very quickly, and the picking things up feels very natural, even though it's using with triggers. It just sort of makes sense. But yeah, we got stuck on the first bit for ages because I guess spoilers if you do this very particular like mission Sigma or something escape room. We had to like basically get down into the sewers through a manhole cover, but we basically couldn't figure out how to get down the manhole cover because we couldn't interact with it, and we couldn't find anything to interact with. The things we can interact with were just like detritus. There's so many things you can interact with, and we just ended up chucking stuff to each other, teleporting about the place, and like looking in every nook and cranny until eventually I looked and I saw there was a crowbar just sitting on a bench, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess a crowbar might be able to lift up the manhole cover. And I grabbed the crowbar and I literally walked over, like knelt by the manhole cover, just held it up to it, and it just like popped off. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's not really what I expected, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. And then we popped down into the basement, and then the next puzzle was fine. We basically had to find like 4 things and then start an engine, fine. And then we got into a lift, and then there was another puzzle with a lift where it was just like, oh, I mean, I'm not going to spoil all the puzzles in case you actually end up doing it or something, but there's a puzzle with lift, it was fine. There's a puzzle with the kitchen. There's one which I would say, like, it wasn't very clear to me. It was a puzzle. No, it wasn't clear to me. It was clear it was a puzzle we had to do. It wasn't clear that we were meant to do it at that moment. Basically, it was sort of like, imagine, like, you were given a puzzle and you look at it immediately and you're like, I could literally just try every solution and I could brute force this. But me at least, unsurprisingly, the way I looked at it was like, okay, I could brute force a solution, but that doesn't seem like the way you're meant to do it. So let's look around for like clues or something. And then eventually, I was like, oh, okay, it's not like you're meant to brute force a solution, but it's more like the observation is sort of like it feels like a weird meta solution rather than necessarily an actual solution I'd expect. I guess that's sort of a disconnect between a physical and a video game, because if I saw it in the physical world, I guess it would kind of make sense, but in a video game, I kind of expect, like, why would you design a puzzle like that in the first place? And the next one was actually kind of an interesting puzzle, because it was a puzzle which you could only really do in virtual reality. Basically, you had to set off a fire alarm by turning on the sprinklers, but they did it by giving you a lighter. And the initial reaction we were all like was like, oh, we had to light something on fire. We had to start a fire, obviously. So we were like trying to find like tinder, we were trying to find like oil to burn or like fuel or something. And we're like, well, what else can we do with this lighter? Until it was actually like, oh, I guess we can climb up on the furniture and actually just hold the lighter up to the sprinkler to set it off. Which is actually, obviously you can't do that. You can do some sort of abstraction about it, like an escape room. But I was like, okay, I don't love the puzzle and the way it's set up, but I actually think that's a fine solution, because it's sort of just like, it's unexpected. And it's something which works better in escape rooms. Then there's this navigation section where one of us would have to communicate with the other one to bypass this thing. But again, that kind of only really works in video games, because you can't. It's difficult to really physically stop someone from moving onward in a physical escape room, without having just like a really expensive room. And then we got stuck for a bit because we just literally couldn't find where to go, because it wasn't like the direction wasn't quite like clear to us, and it was like, oh, okay, we found a way. And then we got to an area where we basically had to climb up a building, which was not the most clearest like puzzle idea in the first place, I would say. And I kind of just like got it by accident, because like I like held my I tried to see if I could pull off basically like a grating or something to like access pipes, and then I just saw like the thing was blue, and then it just like lifted me up. And the only reason I knew what that blue thing meant was because earlier in the level there's like little secret statues hidden around the place, where I accidentally grabbed onto a pipe, and I was like, why is it blue? And it was like, whoa, it hoisted me upwards to find like a secret sitting on top. So then you had to basically climb the wall. It was very weird. Like I actually found it like it looked kind of cool. It did not look or feel realistic in the slightest. You felt like as light as a feather is probably why. But some of my friends said they found it like quite sort of like sickening, motion sickness inducing, which is fair enough. I didn't really try, to be honest. I just sort of climbed up, and then we did a puzzle up top, and the puzzle up top kind of made sense. And then like the whole premise of a story, and then when it finished there, the premise of a story was a bit strange, I'm gonna be honest. But like, nah, you don't really go to an escape room for a story, I'm gonna be honest. Experience, yes, but story, no. But like, all in all, I might sound very negative about the entire situation. Most of my negativity was, to be honest, about the design of the actual video game of the escape room itself. I actually think virtual reality is quite cool to mess around with. Like, I mean, I spoke about like it before. Like VR chat, I think actually seems like kind of a cool sort of thing. It sort of reminds me of like old school like internet chat rooms and that sort of thing. Just like elevated to a new level where you could basically customize your avatar in VR. and whatnot. So yeah, honestly, it kind of sounds kind of cool. And trying it out, I'm like, I can see myself getting a VR headset in the future. I'd like one, like, I'm not sure I'd get one immediately. One, it's insanely expensive. Two, I don't think my computer is good enough to, it probably is good enough just about to run it, but not like well enough for me to be like, yes, this was a worthy investment. But it's sort of thing where I'm like, I can see myself getting one in the future because I am interested in that technology. It's actually cooler than I expected. I actually enjoyed it quite a lot, but I don't know if I'd use it so much for like gaming. Like, I guess that's more to do, more of a comment on the industry itself, not having like a huge amount of like games to go with it. Like you got Half-Life Alyx, of course, is a big title, and then you got like the simulator games in general, I suppose, with Job Simulator, whatever the other ones are. I don't even know what other one. Beat Saber, of course, come out, but you know, the library just isn't there to support. There's not been a game yet where I'm like, yes, this is what I'd want to get VR for. And I think that what that would be for me would be like a big like story-based experience, which I guess Half-Life Alyx kind of is, but you know, just something more than that. Something you know, like my indie story games, which I sort of like, or a puzzle game which can only make sense in VR. I'm not really sure what that is yet, but so be it. I feel like that's not the potential it's missing necessarily, but that's the thing which is not like enticing me towards it. But I think it's got potential. I do think it's got potential. I think it's very cool, virtual reality. So you know, I'm not going to hate on it that much. Yeah, I think it'd be a lot cooler as well to have a room that you can actually physically walk around in, so you're not sort of like confined to like this 1 by 1 meter square, which is, you know, it's workable, but it's sort of just like, it's difficult to get used to. You know, it certainly feels a lot more natural to be like walking around the place and, you know, leaning over things and trying to physically interact with things. But yeah, all in all, it's pretty good. We absolutely decimated that virtual reality escape room, by the way. Like we finished with like time to spare, so much so that the place we're in, for whatever reason, in the virtual reality room, they didn't have like cameras, which I guess makes sense because it's just kind of like 4 people just sort of like standing around, compared to an escape room where they might need like active clues and that sort of thing. The clues are built into the game instead. Yeah. Oh, hello, Lily Valley. We should Lily Valley, not Jacob's Ladder. Excuse me. I forgot what I was going to say. So we absolutely decimated it, so much so that we're just like, do we just like leave because the assistant doesn't know that we're done or anything? There's one point like we were sent back to like just like the general room or whatever, and they just like gave us like a menu to play around with. Not to play around with, just like presumably like the attendants meant to come in quite soon afterwards, but they didn't. So I just kept the headset on and I just kept exploring the menus, and I eventually found a way to the desktop computer which was running the virtual reality software in the first place. So you know, I just was like, I wonder if I can see this. So I opened up Notepad and then like typed in being like, hello, we are finished. And she came in not too long after that, to be honest, but she said she didn't actually see the message. So I don't know, I guess the next people who come in will just like, if they find a desktop as well, they just see a random notepad being like, hello, we have finished, and be like, what's going on? If that happens to you, then that'd be incredibly amusing. Yeah, but yeah, all in all, virtual reality is actually kind of cool, you know. I'm surprised by how much I was interested in it, to be honest. It's a very weird experience. Like, when I first put it on, we were in just like in the the waiting room while we waited for everyone to get situated and ready, where I just literally couldn't stop laughing. I don't know why I found it so funny. I guess it helped. Amusingly, my friends couldn't actually hear me because the microphone on my headset was broken. But I just legitimately could not stop laughing at the entire situation. I don't know what about it made it seem so funny to me, but yeah, virtual reality, it's kind of cool. Do I think you can live a Second Life in virtual reality? No, not really. But I do think, you know, if the game Second Life ever came to virtual reality, and you know, I mean, I guess that's kind of what VR chat is. I think it would be a big hit, to be honest. I can see it working out, but you know, I don't see it as a live replacement. Not yet at the very least. Maybe in future. Give it 50 years, we'll see. But I'm going to round up this episode here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord, down below. Hope we see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time. Bye bye for now.